But thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in, for our Admitted Students Week program on experiential learning. My name is Phil Harrinarine, and I am the Associate Director of Admissions at Villanova Law. I'm also a proud 2017 graduate of Villanova Law as well. I'm joined today by three great individuals so far, hopefully a couple more to join in a little bit. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we're going to go from there throughout this presentation to discuss experiential learning at Villanova. That term might seem a bit foreign right now, but we're going to describe what clinics are all about, what externships are all about, different opportunities, what they might look like for you, and the ways in which you'll be able to take advantage of them as a student here at the law school. I'm going to turn it over now to first our professor who is on the panel, Professor Barry, and then Emily, if you can introduce yourself afterwards, followed by Madeline, that'd be awesome. Thank you all.
I got you. You're all set.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you so much, Phil. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Barry. I am the director of the clinical program here at Villanova, and I teach the Farmworker Clinic, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. My practice background before I came to Villanova was in legal aid for people facing deportation. So I was a deportation defense attorney in Philadelphia for 5 years and also worked at the Defender Association. So I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Professor Barry. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Heimbecker. A little bit about myself. I went to King's College in Wilkes-Barre, PA for undergraduate school. I graduated in 2015. I took a gap year, and then I attended Villanova Law between 2016 and 2019. After graduation, I clerked for Judge Murray at Northampton County Court of Common Pleas in Pennsylvania. And then since then, I've been working at a law firm in Philadelphia doing employment work at Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney. So very nice to be here today, joined by these other panelists, and I'll turn it over to Madelyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madelyn Phinney. I'm a 2L at Villanova Law. I went to the College of New Jersey for undergrad, or TCNJ, if you're from Jersey. I also took a gap year. I taught for a year because I was an education major, though that was largely undone by the pandemic, because obviously as a teacher, we got sent home during the middle of the year. And while at law school, I've worked for the Chester County Public Defender, the Montgomery County Experiential Clinic, and this semester I work for the Pennsylvania Innocence Project.
We're doing introductions, Ali, so I'll turn it over to you next if you want to introduce yourself, or you went to undergrad, a fun fact, anything you've been involved with. I know that you're going to talk about the tax clinic, but just to share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Rozzi. I am a third-year law student here at Villanova. I studied at Lycoming College for undergrad in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I studied political science and accounting there. And a fun fact, I guess I've been skiing since I was 3, so love to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. We're waiting for one other person to join, and once he's able to, Professor Matt McGovern, we'll have him introduce himself. One thing I will mention right now, just for the housekeeping, is that moving forward throughout this presentation today, we're going to ask that you all use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so that way we can, accumulate your questions. We want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have for our panelists about their experiences, for our professors as well. So use the Q&A box. That way we'll be able to keep track of all your questions there. Don't wait till the end. Of course, we want to make sure that you don't forget your questions. And so anything that pops up on your end, definitely throw it in there, and we will make sure we get to it before we're wrapped up today. I want to get started by throwing it over to Professor Barry to just get started preliminarily talking about our clinical programs at Villanova. I know that you have a lot to share about the clinical programs, being the director of the programs and the Farmworker Legal Aid Clinic more specifically. But for those that are on the call today wondering what is a clinic specifically, what does a clinic mean at Villanova Law? Can you sort of break that down for our attendees and admitted students?
Of course. And should I go ahead and share my screen and put the presentation up, Phil?
Go for it.
Okay. Go ahead and do that. So talk about what a clinic is, and hopefully Professor McGovern will be able to join us in a bit. We'll talk about clinics versus externships. We're both a big fan of both. So just a big fan of experiential education broadly, and clinics and externships both have significant benefits to each of them. And I'm excited to hear the reflections from students who have done both as well. So in sort of understanding what a clinic is, I can talk to you about what a clinic is at Villanova. As you're looking at other schools, I think it's a great idea to look at their clinics and sort of how they define clinics. We like to joke that a clinic is the opportunity in law school where you may have been given, read the instructions for assembling a piece of furniture for IKEA in your first year. In clinic, you actually have to build it. And there will be someone around who can support you and give some mentorship, but you have to be the one to find the right tools, and you have to be the one to actually do the drilling. So our clinics at Villanova are all in-house opportunities to provide free legal services to the community. So it's a real legal services office with the understanding that students will be the client's representatives. And so it is an opportunity for students to practice law while they're in law school, not just as the assistant to the attorney in charge, but actually as the lead representative. So as Emily can talk about, when she was in the Farmworker Clinic, she was the one driving out to interview and counsel clients. I wasn't there. We would meet before and after and reflect, but it was Emily who was doing the work. If we go to court, students are sitting at counsel's table and I'm sitting in the gallery, right? So that's should be the hallmark of a clinical model. At Villanova, it is important to note that all of our clinics are in-house, literally meaning they are in the law school building. At some law schools, they're in a separate location. They might be located far away from where the law school actually sits. They may actually be housed within legal services organizations. But at Villanova, they're right here. If any of you have been able to visit the campus, right when you walk in the front door, the clinic is right there. And this is really an expression of the school's commitment to the clinical program and to commitment to the services that we are able to provide. All of our clinics are directed by full-time faculty, so we are here all the time. We're available to you as faculty members all the time. We're not also balancing a number of other responsibilities on top of being faculty. This is our job, and we're very dedicated to it. So I can move through and talk to you about each clinic individually. Does that sound good, Phil? Okay,
Sure.
Great. All right, so we have 6 clinical programs here. This is some photos of our clinical office. We have a beautiful workspace. Having worked in legal aid before I came to Villanova, I was pretty blown away by how lovely the space is, the resources that we have available. The clinic space itself is available to law students 24 hours a day. You get to swipe in with your student ID. And so you're able to come in and work whenever is convenient for you. We have specific work areas for students. We have our own library where you can work in a quiet space. And then we also have conference and interview rooms where students are able to meet with clients confidentially. So here are our 6 clinical programs. Our asylum clinic, civil justice, law and entrepreneurship, farm workers, tax, and health. And then we also have an advanced advocacy clinic. The advanced clinic is an opportunity for students who have already completed 1 semester of clinic, who want to stay on and have a more advanced opportunity. It may be that you were able to prepare a client for trial, but didn't actually get to litigate it. And so you're going to get a pretty significantly different experience staying on for an additional semester. We've also had students who did 1 clinic and decided to do an advanced in another one. So a number of years ago, a student who had completed the health law clinic really wanted the opportunity to handle an appeal. And I happened to have a client who had a case going up on appeal to the 3rd Circuit. And so she and I did the appeal together. She drafted the brief, with my feedback and revisions. She filed it, and we were successful in that case in negotiating a remand back to the trial judge. But that was a nice opportunity for a student to be able to involved in multiple clinics. So we can talk about what each clinic does. Our Clinic for Law and Entrepreneurship is our newest clinic. It is directed by Professor Komal Vaidya. It is it's also a clinic that is serving marginalized communities, as do all of our clinical programs here. Under Professor Vaidya's supervision, students are working with nonprofits and small businesses who have a goal that is consistent with the public interest program that we have here at the law school. So for example, she is representing a number of people from a local community who are recent immigrants from Mexico who wanted to open a coffee shop that would serve the local community and create jobs. And she's done a number of other really interesting projects including partnering with the local Cooperative Alliance in Philadelphia, who are seeking to educate people about the benefits of designing a cooperative business, which is one of Professor Vadia's areas of expertise. It's a really interesting and really unique clinic. It's the only entrepreneurship clinic in the area that specifically has a public interest mission. And Professor Vadia is a national expert in some of these areas. So it's a really unique opportunity to get to work with her. Our civil justice clinic, which is directed by Professor Dia Halder, offers a wide range of civil legal services primarily to survivors of domestic violence. That's primarily the population that they serve. They're able to be very flexible within the clinic and be responsive to the needs of that community. So they handle landlord-tenant cases, custody cases, protection from abuse orders, tangled title cases where people are trying to resolve ownership over their home and resist eviction. They've also handled employment cases, wage theft, and other matters. And so, yeah, a really interesting opportunity to also get to be exposed to a broad range of cases. Students in the civil justice clinic work in teams and then also have their own individual cases and are frequently engaged in case rounds, as all students are in the clinic, where you would get to discuss with other students their cases and get to hear about a different type of case in addition to the one that you're handling. In the interdisciplinary mental and physical health law clinic, we represent clients who have legal issues that will involve medical records. So also can be a significantly wide range of types of cases. They represent people who have been denied coverage by their insurance companies. And so they need to take up an appeal, which can be particularly complicated and difficult for folks to do on their own. They also represent people in need of guardianship petitions who may have competency issues. A really unique clinic that also partners with the nursing school at Villanova in the spring semester and actually do a joint seminar and joint case reflection. So they're able to hear from practitioners in a different discipline on their approach to the services that we're providing. The federal tax clinic obviously represents people in tax matters. It is a litigation clinic, so they're not preparing tax returns. They are representing people in court who have an open legal matter with the federal government involving tax debt. Professor Christine Spidel, who directs that clinic, always wants to remind us that the tax system has become the primary mode for distributing public benefits in the US government. So the largest benefit that many people are eligible for may be the child tax credit or their refund that they could obtain, but many people are uninformed or unable to understand a wildly complicated system. And so the tax clinic is able to assist people in making sure they're getting the benefits that they need. And if they've made mistakes on their tax return, that that's getting resolved in their best interest. So she has a photo here that we got permission from a client to use from some news coverage of some of the great advocacy they've done in the tax clinic. Farmworker Clinic, obviously it's the best clinic. This is the clinic that I teach. We are also a general practice clinic. We represent farm workers and their families in a wide range of legal matters. We try to be responsive to the needs of the community as well. The overwhelming request for assistance that we get in the Farmworker Clinic is for deportation defense. So that is primarily what we practice here. But within that, there's a wide range of the types of visas or other types of applications we would handle. For example, we represent a lot of young people who travel to the United States by themselves and are in need of obtaining custody with a guardian or a single parent, and then also in need of representation before the immigration system. We also do advocacy projects with our community partners. So for example, for the last few years, we've been involved with a campaign to offer driver's licenses to everyone in Pennsylvania. And we've been able to provide legal research, litigate some right to know requests with the driver's license system in Pennsylvania, and provide other forms of legal support on an issue that's crucial to farm workers' ability to survive. Our clinic for asylee, refugee, and immigrant services, CARES Clinic, which is the one that Phil was an outstanding student leader in, is our clinic that represents asylum seekers, in addition to other members of the immigrant community who are facing deportation. It is our largest number of credits that we assign to a clinic. It's 8 credits, where the other clinics are all 6 credits. That's also a good question to ask about clinical programs, is the allocation of credits, and will it be a significant amount of time that you're able to spend with clients? In the CARES clinic, the larger credit allocation just reflects the serious consequences of the cases that that clinic is handling and the time investment involved in representing clients in asylum proceedings. And that clinic is directed by Professor Abel Rodriguez, along with Catherine Kappels, who's our teaching fellow. There's some news coverage of the clinic in recent years, highlighting some of the great services that we're able to provide. In the upper right corner, you might see an op-ed that was written by students at the start of the pandemic in the Farmworker Clinic, who were concerned about the fact that stimulus payments were not being made available to farm workers who were being considered essential workers. And so they wrote a really fantastic op-ed that was published while they were representing their clients in the Farmworker program. All right, and so let me just see, was Professor McGovern able to join us? Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Hi, Matt. If you can introduce yourself, we can also transition, if that works, in your presentation to your section. And feel free as you're going through to loop in Emily and Allie, however is best for you.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt McGovern. I run the externship program at the school. I apologize for being so late. I don't usually have so much trouble joining the Zoom webinar. The assistant dean for admissions was kind enough to get on my computer and log me in as him. So I hope that you can see and hear me now. Professor Barry, if you're controlling the slides, can you just go to the first externship slide there? Our experiential learning program is fabulous at Villanova. I don't mind saying so. I have all kinds of respect for Professor Barry and all the folks that teach in the clinics. They're great. I hope you enjoyed her talk about them. We also have a terrific externship program, and that's the part that I do. The folks that do my kind of work in law schools around the country have chosen the word externship instead of internship, but it's very similar. An externship would just be a practice experience where a law student would work under the supervision of a practicing attorney, which could include a judge and their law clerk, and they would earn school credit toward their degree rather than being paid for their work. Next slide, please. We have externships in a wide range of different practice settings. Not every school permits profit-making law firms and company legal departments to have externs for school credit, but we do. I usually think of the externship placements in 6 different categories. The most popular is with judges and courts. I think that Allie, who's with us today, worked for a bankruptcy judge in her first summer. And then students often work for government agencies, either on the state or the federal or even the city law department level. They can work in company legal departments. I'll show you a slide after this one that has the logos for a couple of the companies where our students do externships. The placements with prosecutors and defenders' offices are very popular, where you get a chance to be in front of judges and get a lot of litigation experience handling criminal cases and dealing with clients and witnesses and things like that. There are also public interest organizations, legal aid offices, community legal services, and some that are devoted to particular areas. We've had several students work with the Clean Air Council if they're interested in the area of environmental law, or with the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts organization if they're interested in art law or intellectual property. And we also permit students to do externships in private law firms, which gives them a wide range of different things they can do. It's not so easy to find a legal aid or government agency that will permit a student to be involved in real estate practice or entertainment law or some of the other areas. Please go to the next slide. So this one has logos of some of the frequent externship placements where we have students. Now this year at Villanova, we had a record number of externships throughout the whole year, the summer, the fall, and the spring. We've had over 300. So there are many more organizations than you see on this slide, but it has some of the repeated ones. You can see the logos for the court on the left side, the Pennsylvania courts, on the right side, the US courts. We have students working with judges in trial and appellate courts at the state and federal level, the New Jersey courts too, which is included there. In terms of company legal departments, I would include the one in the upper left, which is Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Our students that are interested in either business law or health law, like that externship there. Emily, who's with us today, did our externship at Louis Vuitton. They have a terrific office in Manhattan, and New York has been hit hard by the coronavirus, so it's on hiatus right now. I hope and expect that our wonderful alum up there will start taking our extern students back in the spring semester of 2023. I think that would be reasonable to happen. And she's the employment law specialist for the company. You can also see some of the criminal practice examples here. In the upper right is the District Attorney's Office for Philly. In the lower left, the Defender Association, which is the public defender for the city. And then just under the DA's office logo, there's the one for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania at the U.S. Attorney's Office. There are a couple of companies and a couple of other places listed here. I don't think I need to name them all. Please go to the next slide. If you're wondering what an externship student does when they have their externship, they do things like what's listed on this slide. They will conduct legal research to help their supervising attorneys understand the law and how it applies to particular facts and issues and cases that arise. They will assist in preparing for hearings or depositions or other court proceedings. They may prepare comments on agency regulations, or if they work for the agency, to gather and analyze, summarize the comments that come in. They're often involved in drafting legal documents of one type or another, either letters to clients or letters to government agencies, or drafts of contracts or changes to contracts. Or if they're involved in litigation, then the documents that are filed in court, the petitions, the complaints, the replies, the briefs, or if they work for the judge, the court opinions or court orders. And then they often attend meetings where they see their attorneys counseling clients or negotiating with other attorneys, or hearings and proceedings in court, like trials or other hearings. Please go to the next slide. There's many ways that we help students to find their externships. Of course, there are lists of the frequent externships, and I provide a lot of information to students through emails and online guides to show them where different host organizations are located and how they apply there and what to expect. There are certain standing externship positions with judges and agencies and prosecutors and defenders that are expecting they're expecting Villanova to send a certain number of students each semester or each summer. The school participates in employment fairs, sometimes just at Villanova and sometimes with other law schools in the Philly area. We have an electronic job announcement system where students can find opportunities. Some of the organizations come to campus to do interviews. Our wonderful faculty and alumni help connect students to opportunities for externships. And I do a lot of meetings individually with students to consider their particular interest or group meetings. And I think I have one more slide. Thank you so much. A few of the things I think you should know about our externship program is that it's big. There's lots of opportunities in lots of different places and types of organizations. There's a wide variety of practice settings, and students can come up with their own ideas for externships and create an independent placement. Just have a meeting with me and we'll talk about it, make sure it'll be a strong learning experience. And I try to always be supportive of what students are looking for. We have a terrific alumni network. Many of the supervising attorneys in the places where our students do externships are alumni of Villanova, and they take a special interest in our students. While the students are having that practice experience, they meet regularly with faculty advisors to help them reflect on their work experience and take away the best learning tips from it. And I have a few classroom meetings with the students so that they can get together and hear a little bit from each other about different practice settings. And I think that's all of my slides about the externship program.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Professor McGovern. I definitely want to loop in our students at this point, and Emily, of course, to chat about their experiences with experiential learning outside of the classroom. I will say that looking back on my time in law school at Villanova, that was some of the most exciting experiences that I had, being a part of a clinic, and then, of course, doing an externship in my third year of law school. So I want to go to our students to sort of describe for everybody attending what your experiential learning opportunities have looked like. I know that, Madelyn, for you, they're more on the externship side. Ali, for you, it's a mixture, right? Judicial, but also the clinic. And Emily, you're sort of a jack of all trades as well with both. So I'll start with you, Madelyn, if you want to describe where you have externed and sort of what those experiences were like for you, and then Allie and Emily.
Sure. So my first summer, the summer after my 1L year, I externed with the Chester County Public Defender's Office. So if you're not from the area, Chester County is about like half an hour, 25 minutes from Villanova. Public Defender's Office there was great, and it was a really excellent experience for me in terms of just getting sort of a sense for criminal law, for the courtroom, what that looked like. You're in court all the time, getting to watch these attorneys work and see what the day-to-day of their life is. And then on top of that, I got to interact with clients for the first time, and that's a really huge thing at law school that you maybe don't get always in the classroom, and something that you should definitely consider when you're thinking about where you want to go to school is what opportunities they have for you to reach out and to interact with real people and to do real work. And then this semester, I work for the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, and that's sort of distinct from the Public Defender's Office. While it's still criminal law, instead of having a bunch of clients and cases constantly coming in, you really hyper-focus on one case. You're given access to a specific client's case, all of their case files. And for me specifically, and my client that I have this semester, that's hundreds of files and transcripts, and you're dealing with post-conviction relief issues. So it's a bit more of a deep dive into one specific case, but you get to learn a lot in terms of how the process works for post-conviction relief and things like that. So it's been a really great experience.
I'll start next. So at Villanova, I was so thrilled to participate in the Farmworker Legal Aid Clinic. And in that clinic at that time, I was actually partnered with someone else in the clinic. And so he and I were a team. We had a specific client that we were serving. And as Professor Barry was explaining, it was up to us to figure out, okay, like we need to figure out, how do you interview a client? How do you, if your client doesn't speak the same language as you, you need to do a lot of coordinating to set up an interpreter, and how are they going to get to you, or how are you going to get to them? So it makes you realize there are so many steps in being able to really serve your clients, not just from the legal aspect, but the practical aspect. When we met with our clients, we were always trying to be very cognizant of what their needs were so that we could meet them. So I worked on a guardianship case, and then we also had another client involved in a sexual harassment issue in their workplace. And so we worked on filing a notice to the employer that we were going to be filing a charge with the EEOC and PHRC. And so those were very practical skills. There were times where we were kind of got to a roadblock, and we weren't sure what to do. And so that's when you go back to your professor and you figure out a plan. Professor Barry is incredibly generous, incredibly kind, but she's also tough. So this is not an area where you can slack off. And I remember one assignment in particular, for some reason, I just kind of, I did the bare minimum, to be fair. And Professor Barry said, I think you can do more than this. And so that really stuck with me. I redid the assignment, and then I kind of carried that thought process into my later externships. And so even when you receive an assignment that you think, oh, this is small, this is minimal, like I just have to, fill in the blanks, you should really go above and beyond, because when you get those sort of assignments, your professors or your supervisors are able to tell whether you're putting in the bare minimum or not. And so it was a really good learning experience to just reflect and say, okay, even if it is a small assignment, I'm going to give it my all every single time. Do you also want at this point to get into externships?
Yeah, you can just briefly describe the externships that you participated in before we go to Allie afterwards.
Okay. And so I also did externships through Villanova. So that's when I worked with Professor McGovern. And I will say that the alumni connection is very strong at Villanova, because my first externship was with David's Bridal. Their in-house associate counsel was a Villanova law grad. And so they reached out to Professor Giuliano and they said, we need, a student. And so Professor Giuliano was saying, oh, are there any students? And then I had her for civil procedure. And so it kind of fell into place that way. But I will share, I remember attending the Accepted Students Day back in 2016 and going up to career planning. And I'm like, I want to go into fashion law. And it comes off as a pipe dream. It's like, well, how is that going to happen? And there's so many people that come into the school thinking, oh, I want sports law or I want environmental law. And there's a lot of people that also don't know what they want. So either way, you're still going to be able to find your pathway. There's people along the way in the school and outside of the school that want to help you get there. So I did the David's Bridal externship, and they loved during the interview process that I had retail experience working in a retail store. So it's like what I did before law school, helped me get that first externship. And then after that, I interviewed for the Louis Vuitton externship. They loved that I had the experience at the David's Bridal one. And so everything just builds off of each other. And I, put in a lot of effort into a small assignment at the Louis Vuitton externship. And my supervisor was like, wow, this is really good. Like, I sent it to the general counsel. So it was like that learning experience from the clinic passed over to the externship. And I remember thinking, these people that are my supervisors at the externships, it's almost like a revolving door, because they have students come in for a couple weeks, a couple months, and then they leave. And so I thought to myself, I need to get the revolving door to stop, because I want them to remember me, and I want them to know that I'm really committed to this position and, future relationships and future opportunities. And so my suggestion to all the students here would be, figure out how you can get the revolving door to stop, because you want to be able to show you're going to put in really hard work for even the small assignments, and people are going to remember that and remember you. So that's my spiel.
Hi, everyone. As I've mentioned before, my name's Allie. My experiential learning path at Villanova started with working for Judge Frank in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania's bankruptcy court. And that experience was really rewarding and eye-opening in terms of, how the judicial system works and how litigants interact with the court system. And so before coming to law school, I had already had a interest in pursuing tax. And so I kind of went into the bankruptcy externship with a tax focus, and the judge that I'd worked for knew that. And so he was able to give me some assignments that touched on tax issues that intersect with bankruptcy law. And so that was really rewarding, because I got to delve a little bit more deeply into my interest for tax, as well as this tangential bankruptcy law cases. And so in that experience, I was able to do a bunch of legal research for this judge and draft some judicial rule statements from that research. And as Emily said, the work that you do on the small scale really matters. So, some legal research that I was doing that maybe didn't take so long, but then I added my own, comments about where I think that the pattern of the law is going, really mattered to my judge. And when I spoke with him after giving my assignments in, he was really impressed with that, right? So those things all matter. And so I would just like to highlight that as well. And from there, I worked for the tax clinic, and absolutely loved my time in the tax clinic. I worked in the clinic my second year of law school in the fall semester, and I did the advanced clinic in the spring semester as well. And the clinic was a phenomenal experience, as mentioned before, getting some real life client interaction. Prior to law school, my experience had been working for other judges as well. And so I'd always been on that side of litigation and hadn't seen, you know, what happens on the plaintiff or defense side and that side of litigation as well. So it was really eye-opening. And just to be able to communicate with clients and like build relationships, to me was really rewarding. When you're in law school, it's very abstract, right? Like you're just reading cases and not remembering names, just trying to get the rule and apply that to facts that don't seem to make much sense. And when you get into a clinic, you're seeing real life people, right, that have these issues with the legal system. And to be able to provide an ounce of help to them is very rewarding. And so, yeah, I've really enjoyed my time with the clinic. And as Emily said as well, these experiences build off of one another. So your resume will tell a story. And so from the clinic, I was able to get an internship with IRS Honors for my second summer. And they loved my clinic experience. Like I'm 99% sure that's why I got the internship for that summer. And my job post-grad right now, I'm going to be working for PricewaterhouseCoopers in international tax. And they absolutely love my clinic experience as well. And it was something that was highlighted on my resume many times and asked about numerous times. So clinic experience is really important, as well as other experiential learning things that Villanova has, like the externships. My experience with the judge was phenomenal as well.
Thanks, Allie. I guess moving forward, we want to make sure that we answer your questions, and so I'm going to encourage the attendees, our admitted students, to put any questions that you have into the Q&A box, like I mentioned earlier. That way we'll be able to answer your questions as we sort of progress on. One of the things that I kept hearing over and over again is just the importance of getting involved in either a clinic, an externship, or both. And I will just say that, when you read about our clinics online, when you heard Professor Berry just speak about them, they are nuanced. They are about different areas of law, specifically immigration, tax, civil matters, so on and so forth. I always say this, and I feel like I might be a bit of a broken record, but the skill sets you acquire are truly transferable. I can't understate the importance of that. And I don't want someone to think about, an immigration clinic and think to yourself, well, immigration law is not the ultimate goal for myself, right? Emily is not in immigration practice right now. I do immigration pro bono work, but this is my day in and day out job. You see me all the time. I'm not doing this every day. So it is really important to understand the value that clinics can bring and add to your law school experience. And then Professor McGovern assists you in finding those niche experiential learning opportunities through externships with fashion law, with art, with the criminal side of things, with a judge, with a law firm, things of that nature. So there really is an expansive view to experiential learning, things to definitely keep in mind, and to be open to sort of all the exciting opportunities that you will be exposed to as sort of time progresses. There are some questions here in the Q&A box. We're going to continue to answer some of them. But this first question I want to ask here might be to the students. Let me ask it out loud. It says, has there been any flexibility in students being able to complete part or even a full externship or clinic in a remote or hybrid fashion? I'm immune compromised and I'm unsure whether these programs would be a good fit if they would be fully in person. Matt, do you have anything to say in regards to at least externships and remote possibilities? And then Professor Berry as well afterwards.
Yes, of course. You can do an externship virtually as a remote worker. COVID has shut down a lot of offices, and we wouldn't have much of an externship program if we didn't permit virtual externships right now. But even going forward, the school has seen the benefit of that, and it gives students opportunities to work with folks that do their work on the go and aren't in the office much, or organizations that aren't local and you couldn't commute to very easily while you're here at school. There's another question about the summer and the different semesters. The externship program operates all around the year. You can have a summer externship, a fall, or a spring.
And I would say we'd be happy to work with students to create the right opportunity for them. I've had students with a range of different abilities in the clinic in the 10 years that I've been here, and we've worked on accommodations to meet students wherever they are. We taught a fully remote clinic seminar for the first year of the pandemic, and did most of our client work remotely. Unfortunately, for students who want to litigate, many of the courts, particularly the smaller trial level courts, are still requiring in-person appearances. But in immigration court, there are a lot of new opportunities to appear over phone or video. I have a student right now who has an accommodation to be remote, and she just emailed me the draft of a motion to terminate. She's going to file this week, and has been able to do a lot of client work remotely as well. So the pandemic really has opened up some possibilities. A challenge we obviously face in the Farmworker Clinic is that many of our clients don't have access to internet, which really limits our ability to meet with folks remotely. But again, we can always get creative about what students' goals are and how we can figure out to meet them.
Professor Berry, I'm going to stay with you just moving forward a little bit to help maybe describe a little bit about the application process for clinics. I know that that's something that Professor McGovern chatted about with regard to externships, but I know that there are different processes in place for different clinics at the law school. What does that look like? I know sometimes there are questions about how easy is it to get into a clinic, especially one of your choosing, one that you really want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So since I have been here, we have been able to place every student who wanted to be in a clinic by the time they graduate from Villanova. We do have a preference for 3Ls just to make sure that they get the opportunity before they graduate, but we do have 2Ls as well who are in the clinic every year. So we have had enough space for everyone to take a clinic. I would say as long as you are open to more than one clinic opportunity. If there is really only one clinic you will take and it happens to fill up, there may not be anything that we can do, but we do try to be flexible and make sure that everyone gets into a clinic who wants to take one. So at Villanova, you register for all of your classes for the academic year at one time. So it's all done in March for the following academic year, and clinics enroll the same way. Our asylum clinic and our entrepreneurship clinic both have applications. The remainder of the clinics are done by lottery. We think this ensures we get a really nice range of participation of students who are able to take a clinic. We're just actually today completing clinic registration. And again, we're able to place every student who wanted to take a clinic by the time they're going to graduate with a placement. And just wanted to add quickly to what Phil said about if you don't see your primary interest area listed in the title of a clinic. Teaching the Farmworker Clinic is obviously something I'm pretty familiar with, because in the 10 years I've done this, I have had one student who became a farmworker lawyer. I've had a number of students who became immigration lawyers, but primarily students go into other practice areas. I was just talking to a student who's in the advanced clinic this semester, so she's doing her second semester in the Farmworker Clinic, and she has a job. She's going to represent insurance companies after she graduates. And she said the biggest benefit of clinic to her was understanding who she is as a lawyer. What is her work style? What are the types of activities that she enjoys in the day-to-day? What is her interpersonal style, her interviewing style? How does she manage her time? How does she plan out cases and projects? All of those are transferable skills, and they're all going to help her in whatever work environment she goes into. She was also able to help people while she was in law school, which was important to her. But you don't have to have a public interest career goal to participate in clinic. I hope some of you will think about incorporating public interest no matter what direction you're going into. But there's no need for you to have that as a goal. I'll occasionally see students who will say, well, I really want to work with children, and I don't see anything about a children's clinic. We represent children in my clinic. We represent children in the civil justice clinic. But the skills that you would need to represent children full time, you're going to develop a lot of those skills in any of our clinical programs. So I would just encourage you to be open.
And then really quickly, Professor McGovern, what comes to mind as sort of being some of our rare, exciting, different, unique externship opportunities over the last few years? What sort of stands out as being some of the places where somebody maybe created an externship that didn't pre-exist, or some of the pre-existing ones that are unique, that are special, that students are always really excited to take advantage of?
Well, one of the repeated ones that I'm excited about is the one that Emily did. We have a wonderful alum who's the employment law specialist for Louis Vuitton. And as soon as that opened back up, I can't wait to get students in there. It's a great fashion law and corporate law opportunity, and they get to go to New York. In terms of unique things that students have designed for themselves, Professor Berry will remember a student named Nick a few years ago who had a connection to, I think his fiance was getting a permanent job in Hawaii. So he found an opportunity doing an externship at the legal aid office on Maui. And he was able to join our class sessions by Zoom, which is the way we do them in the summer anyway. And they liked him so much they hired him, and that's where he's working now. So there's a lot of flexibility. There was a question in the Q&A about what do you do if there isn't a particular clinic in an area of interest. I think the student mentioned patent law. And that's what the externship program is for. There's a lot of different opportunities. One of the advantages of our school is we're located very close to Wilmington, Delaware. And Delaware is the place where a lot of businesses are registered or headquartered. And so when they fight over patents and other intellectual property matters, their disputes are often heard by the federal courts in Delaware. And so if a student's interested in patent law, I often talk to them about whether they'd like to work for a judge down there. They're going to see a lot of patent disputes if they do that. The other places they can work are the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. So the artists have their intellectual property that they're trying to protect or maybe license or monetize. And there's a certain amount of patent work that goes along with that. And then students that are interested in a patent practice in a law firm, that's a possibility for an externship too. I hope that answers your question, Phil.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So we're getting to the point right now where we have about 10 minutes or so left. I'm going to leave the panel to our professors here to take charge for the remaining time to answer your questions. Really quickly before I leave, I'm going to throw the Zoom links into the chat box for the next presentations. There's going to be one on career strategy, and then there's going to be one on joint degree. So if you're interested in learning more about career outcomes and sort of about the career strategy team here at Villanova, join that one, as well as if you're interested in the JD MBA, JD MPA, JD International LLM program, or JD LLM and tax program, feel free to join the joint degrees program as well. Both of those are going to start at 3 p.m. Eastern time. But there are a couple of questions in the Q&A box that I'll leave to you, Professor Barry, if you'd like to moderate those. And I'll see hopefully some of you in a little bit. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Phil. Emily, there's a great question here for you. I don't know if you could see it. So you mentioned that you wanted to, she wanted her externships to stop the revolving door and remember you individually. So do you have any tips for students about how to stand out?
Sure. So I actually baked a cake. There was a family recipe that we love. It's like a cinnamon chocolate chip cake. And I baked the cake. I live in Philadelphia, so I commuted with a cake to New York, brought it in, put it in the like common area, and just said like, please enjoy. The general counsel loved that cake so much. She was like, I need the recipe. And during the pandemic, the legal team wanted to do something fun, and they put together a cookbook, and they included my cake from 2 years ago. And so it's just something so simple that like can humanize you. I'm not saying you have to make a cake, you could do something completely different, but something that just like makes you memorable and shows your personality and shows that you care. So that's how I did it. And I would also add, I don't know if Professor McGovern, you know this yet, but Tiffany McDonough is actually teaching fashion law at Villanova. So she'll be a part-time professor. So that's another great way to meet her. And I did see another question about sports law. I did the sports law journal. And so there's a lot of students. So similar to how there's a law review, students can do the environmental or sports law journals where they write scholarly articles about those topics. It was a really interesting time where name, image, and likeness were an issue, where the Me Too movement was happening in sports, where gender pay with women's soccer was happening. So a lot of really cool topics. And there's also a symposium. So people can work with Professor Brandt and participate in the symposium. And like, that's how you really get those connections. And then someone who mentioned patent law, I really like intellectual property as well. So I took classes with Professor Risch, and he was fantastic. So there's a lot, even if you don't see a specific like keyword being used in the clinic or the externship program, there's definitely opportunities to connect with professors in Villanova and their connections outside of the school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Madelyn and Allie, did you want to share anything about sort of how to stand out, distinguish yourself in experiential opportunities?
Yeah, well, first of all, the story about the cake is excellent, but I think even just little things like for me, with the Chester County job, just figuring out like where everyone sits for lunch, like when they eat, like just sort of inserting yourself into the office culture as much as you can. Once you start working there, after your first week, go around to people's offices, introduce yourself, even if they're not your direct supervisor or you're not doing a lot of work with them, just making sure that you put your face around the office and say, hi, I'm Madelyn, it's nice to meet you. I'm interning here this summer. You know, if you ever need anything, I'm down the hall, there's a group of us there, and just engaging in any of that office culture stuff. If it's someone's birthday and there's a cake available, like make sure that you go and interact with that, engage with that, and make those social connections in addition to the professional ones, because that's really what people remember.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think for me, most of my experiences have been remote. And so setting yourself apart and building those social relationships becomes a bit harder. But there are definitely things that you can do. So for me, I just made sure to schedule meetings, like Zoom meetings, to just chat with whoever my supervisor was on a weekly basis. So when I worked with the judge, that was entirely remote. And he actually made sure that we spoke every day via Zoom, or I think it was Microsoft Teams at the time. And so, you know, in that, you know, maybe half hour to an hour conversation that I would have with him, we would devote a portion of that time to just talking about life, you know, things that are going on within chambers and stuff like that. And last summer when I was with IRS, it was also completely remote internship, but the office would have like happy hours in Philly, and there were some like retirement parties that were happening. And so I ended up going to this retirement party for this IRS attorney that had been there for like 50 years or something like that. I don't know. And I had no idea who anybody was there, but, you know, I just had introduced myself to the people that were in the office, and I'd only known them via computer. And so it was a really good experience to get my face out there and chat with people that way, and build connections. So yeah, if you can do that, I would recommend that as well.
Thanks so much for that, Allie. And Professor McGovern, is there anything you wanted to add about sports law opportunities beyond what Emily just mentioned?
Yes, I thought I should follow up on what she mentioned. A few of the places that we have sports law externships regularly are with college athletics compliance departments. So the athletics compliance director at Villanova has a law degree. And as long as you find a school where that's the case, then they can qualify as a supervising attorney for externship credit. And last summer, we had 4 students doing that, one at Villanova, one at St. Joe's, one at Penn State, and a student who went home to Mississippi and worked with the compliance director for the Mississippi State University Athletics Department. So that's one option. We frequently have sports law externships with sports agents and occasionally with teams. Someone did an externship with the attorney for the NBA Coaches Association one summer. So there's a number of different things you can do.
Yeah, and just to reiterate how fantastic Professor McGovern is at working with students to find opportunities if we don't have something already built that are going to meet your needs, as long as you give him enough notice. And we're not trying to do it the first week of classes. But I've had so many students who took clinic who said, you know, I've been able to really progress in these skills. I'd like to focus in, like Emily did, on a particular area of practice that I'm interested in next. And then we can work with Professor McGovern to figure out what the right opportunity is going to be and set it up. So one last question, have there been any externships related to cryptocurrency and cyber compliance? Any thoughts, Professor McGovern?
I was muted. Yes, one or two. We had a law firm that was based in Philly working on blockchain technology, and they had an extern a couple of summers ago. We had at least one of them, maybe two by now. There's also a firm based in New Jersey that focuses on cybersecurity and digital privacy, which is not the same as blockchain, but similar in the high tech and cutting edge type of work that they do. And they've taken several of our extern students.